Welcome back, everyone. I'm really excited for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at Qabalah,
Okay.
specifically how it's used in ceremonial magic.
Mm-hmm.
Our listener sent in a chapter from a book, and they really want to understand the main ideas,
Mm-hmm.
but without getting bogged down, in all
Yeah.
those details. It
Yeah.
looks like we've got history, symbolism, hands-on techniques, that blend of Jewish mysticism with things like tarot and astrology.
Yeah.
That's what has me so intrigued.
It's really cool that you're drawn to the practical application. I think that focus will be really helpful as we unpack this
Yeah.
really intricate system.
Absolutely. I feel like there's a hidden language just waiting to be decoded. This way of seeing the world that's both ancient and so relevant today.
That's a great way to put it. Kabbalah, at its core, is Hebrew for tradition. But it's not about blindly clinging to the past. It's this living, breathing tradition, constantly evolving through interpretation and reinterpretation. And that's what eventually gave rise to Christian and Hermetic Kabbalah.
So it's less like a fixed monument
Hmm.
and more like a river, constantly flowing, branching out, taking on new forms while still retaining its essence.
Exactly. And to understand those branches, we need to trace the river back to its source.
Okay.
Let's journey through Kabbalah's history and see how those initial currents shaped its course.
All right. Lead the way. I'm ready for this whirlwind tour.
Let's start with the prophet Ezekiel's vision.
Go.
God on a fiery chariot, surrounded by angels, communicating through words. This imagery is foundational to Kabbalah. It surfaces again and again throughout its evolution.
Wow, I can see how that would capture the imagination and inspire a whole mystical tradition. How did that vision actually, translate into a system of thought?
Well, after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, the focus of Judaism shifted dramatically. Rabbinic Judaism emerged, emphasizing scripture, and personal spiritual experience over temple rituals.
So it became less about outward actions
Mhm.
and more about inner exploration.
Exactly. And texts like the Sephirot, written sometime around the 4th century, laid the groundwork for Kabbalah as we know it. It introduces this concept of God creating the world through 32 paths of wisdom, the 22 Hebrew letters, and the 10 Sephirot.
Okay, the Sephirot. That's a word I've encountered but never fully grasped.
Yeah.
They feel central to Kabbalah, but what are they exactly?
Imagine them as spheres, emanations of divine energy, each with its own unique qualities and attributes. They're arranged in a very specific pattern, which I'll dive into later.
So the Sephiroth are like facets of the divine, each expressing a different aspect of creation.
That's a great way to put it. And the Sephirot sets the stage for how later Kabbalists would map out those facets and their relationships.
So the Sephirot laid the foundation. What came next in this development of Kabbalah?
Medieval Kabbalists saw a flourishing of different schools, each interpreting these core ideas in their own unique ways. One key text from this period is the Sefer HaBahir, written sometime between 1150 and 1200. This is where we first encountered the Tree of Life as we know it today.
Wait, the Tree of Life? Is that the diagram with all the interconnected circles?
You got it. The Bahir takes those 10 Sephiroth and arranges them in a tree-like structure, further developing the concept of God as multiple forces, including feminine aspects. This was a radical departure from traditional views of the divine at the time.
So even back then, Kabbalah was pushing boundaries and challenging established dogma.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating.
And then we have figures like Isaac the Blind, who took a more philosophical approach. He argued that God is ultimately beyond human comprehension, that our intellect is too limited to truly grasp the divine. This focus on the unknowable aspects of God really resonated within certain Qabalistic circles.
That idea of a mystery that can be approached, but never fully grasped, definitely appeals to the philosophy enthusiast in me.
I thought you might appreciate that aspect. And this brings us to perhaps the most famous Qabalistic text, the Zohar. It became hugely influential. Despite not actually being written until the late 13th century, it presents itself as a much older work, which contributed to its aura of mystery and authority.
Ah, the classic lost ancient wisdom trope. It always seems to add a certain allure. But what is it about the Zohar that made it so influential?
Unlike some earlier texts, the Zohar isn't just a dry theological treatise. It's a vibrant collection of stories, dialogues, and mystical interpretations of Scripture. And it's through the Zohar that the idea of exile becomes central to Kabbalah.
Exile. You mean the historical exile of the Jewish people?
Yes, but it goes deeper than that. The Zohar presents the idea of a cosmic exile, where sparks of divine light have become trapped in the material world. And it's through our actions, through striving for spiritual perfection, that we can help liberate those sparks. This concept is known as tikkun olam, the idea that our actions have cosmic significance.
That adds a whole new dimension to the idea of personal responsibility. It's not just about individual growth. It's about contributing to the healing of the universe.
Exactly, and that emphasis on the interconnectedness of everything, that our actions ripple out into the cosmos, is a key theme in the Zohar.
This is incredible. I'm seeing how Kabbalah evolved within Jewish mystical thought, building upon itself, layer by layer, idea upon idea. But I'm guessing this is just the beginning of the story.
Oh, there's so much more to explore. During the Renaissance, Kabbalah takes an unexpected turn, sparking a whole new movement in the West.
Before we jump across centuries, let's pause here and digest all this incredible history. What stands out to IU as the most significant development in early Kabbalah?
What fascinates me is this constant tension between preserving tradition and embracing innovation. It's like Kabbalah is always seeking a balance between the ancient and the new, the revealed and the hidden. And that tension is what gives it so much vitality and makes it endlessly relevant.
That tension between preserving tradition and forging those new paths is definitely something I'm seeing throughout Kabbalah's history.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for that leap to the Renaissance? You mentioned Kabbalah takes an unexpected turn.
It does. Imagine this. Renaissance humanists rediscover ancient texts, including those Qabalistic writings we've been discussing. They're obsessed with connecting different areas of knowledge, bridging ancient wisdom with their own burgeoning understanding of the world. And Qabbalah, with its intricate symbolism and connections to the divine, becomes their new philosophical playground.
So it's like they stumbled upon a treasure map, but instead of leading to buried gold, it pointed towards the hidden structure of the universe itself.
That's a great way to put it. And one of the key figures in this Renaissance rediscovery is Giovanni Pico della Mirandola. He made a rather bold claim. He argued that Kabbalah was the ultimate proof of Christianity. Quite ironic, considering its roots in Jewish mysticism.
The irony is definitely not lost on me. It seems like Kabbalah, in a way, transcends any specific religious doctrine. It taps into something deeper, like a universal language of symbolism and meaning.
That's the essence of Hermetic Kabbalah. It's not exclusive to any one group. It becomes a system for understanding the cosmos, accessible to anyone who can unlock its secrets.
Speaking of unlocking secrets, was it still all about, secret initiations and hidden knowledge back then? Or did something change with this Renaissance shift?
That's another fascinating aspect of this period. With the invention of the printing press, knowledge is no longer confined to small, elite circles. Books become the new vessels of wisdom, spreading Qabalistic ideas far and wide. Anyone with access to these texts could delve into its mysteries.
So that's why we're able to have this deep dive today. We're benefiting from that democratization of knowledge, exploring ideas that were once whispered in secret societies. Okay, with Qabalistic ideas circulating more freely, who were some of the key figures who shaped this new landscape?
You can't talk about Renaissance magic without mentioning Cornelius Agrippa. His 3 books of occult philosophy became essential reading for anyone interested in the magical arts. And his work drew heavily on Qabbalah, weaving those concepts into a practical system of magic.
I'm curious about that connection between Qabbalah and magic. What do you think drew Agrippa to Qabbalah? How did he see it fitting into the magical practices of his time?
Agrippa was a true polymath. Drawing from various traditions, Christian, Jewish, pagan, Hermetic, he saw Qabbalah as a unifying framework, a way to synthesize those diverse streams of knowledge. It provided a system of correspondences, connecting seemingly disparate elements, planets, elements, herbs, even musical notes, through a shared symbolic language.
So he's taking these abstract Kabbalistic concepts and grounding them in the world of practical magic. And this blending of Qabbalah and magic, that leads us to more modern magical practices, right?
You're on the right track. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, emerging in the late 19th century, further developed and formalized this blend of Qabbalah and magic. They incorporated practices like tarot and created elaborate rituals, all informed by those core Kabbalistic principles.
The Golden Dawn, that's a name that's always held a certain mystique for me. What was their approach to Qabbalah? What did they add to this evolving tradition?
They took those Hermetic Qabbalah concepts, the system of correspondences, the idea of working with subtle energies, and systematized them into a full-blown magical system. They meticulously mapped out connections between the Tree of Life and various other systems, including tarot, astrology, and even Egyptian mythology.
You mentioned tarot. I know you're particularly interested in how that fits into all of this. But before we dive into that, I need a bit more clarity on the Tree of Life itself. We've touched on it a few times, but I'm still struggling to see the whole picture.
That's understandable. The Tree of Life isn't just a static diagram. It's a dynamic map of existence, a blueprint of the divine, and even a reflection of the self.
Okay, a map, a blueprint, and a mirror. I'm intrigued but a little overwhelmed. How can one diagram hold so much meaning?
Each of those 10 Sephiroth, those spheres on the tree, embodies a unique aspect of creation. And they're not isolated points, they're interconnected, flowing into one another, like energy in the universe.
So it's less like a fixed structure and more like a cosmic circulatory system, with energy constantly pulsing through those interconnected spheres.
Exactly. And just as is in our own circulatory system, each organ plays a vital role. Each Sephirot has its unique function within the grand scheme of things. To really grasp the tree, we need to explore those individual Sephiroth and the relationships between them.
All right, lead the way. I'm ready to explore this cosmic circulatory system.
Let's start at the top with Kether. Imagine Kether as pure potential, the primordial spark before anything manifests. It's the realm of pure being, the source from which everything flows.
So Kether is like the Big Bang and the Tree of Life, the initial burst of energy that sets everything in motion.
That's a great way to visualize it. And as we move down the tree, that pure potential begins to take on form and definition. Each subsequent Sephiroth represents a step in that process of manifestation, a crystallization of divine energy into more tangible forms.
Okay, so it's like a descent from pure spirit into matter, with each Sephiroth representing a stage in that journey.
Precisely. And then, at the very bottom of the tree, we find Malkuth. If Kether is pure potential, Malkuth is its realization. The physical world we experience with our senses, it's the realm where spirit takes on form, where the abstract becomes concrete.
So Kether is the seed, and Malkuth is the fully bloomed flower.
That's a beautiful analogy. And all the Sephiroth in between represent those stages of growth and development, the unfolding of that seed into its full potential. But it's not a simple linear progression.
What do you mean?
Well, the Tree of Life isn't just a vertical ladder. There's a horizontal dimension as well, represented by the 3 pillars: the pillar of severity, the pillar of mercy, and the pillar of mildness.
So it's like a three-dimensional map, not just a flat diagram. This is getting complex.
It is complex, but that complexity reflects the richness and depth of Qabalah. These 3 pillars represent different modes of being, different ways in which the divine energy expresses itself in the world.
Can you give me a sense of how those pillars play out in the Tree of Life?
The pillar of severity on the left side of the tree is associated with strength, discipline, and boundaries. It's the force that sets limits, that provides structure and form. The pillar of mercy on the right represents love, compassion, and expansion. It's the force that nurtures and heals, that dissolves boundaries and allows for growth.
And what about that middle pillar?
The pillar of mildness represents balance, harmony, and integration. It's the path that runs straight down the center of the tree, connecting Kether to Malkuth. It represents the synthesis of those seemingly opposing forces, the perfect union of strength and compassion.
This is fascinating. So the Tree of Life isn't just a map of creation, it's also a map for spiritual development. It shows us the path to integrating those different aspects of ourselves, finding balance between our own inner strength and compassion.
Exactly. And that's why the Tree of Life is such a powerful tool for a personal transformation. It provides a framework for understanding our own inner landscape, for identifying our strengths and weaknesses, and for consciously working towards greater wholeness.
Okay, my mind is definitely expanding as we explore this, but there's one thing I'm still not quite clear on. You mentioned that the Tree of Life is also a reflection of the self. What does that mean exactly? How does this map of the cosmos relate to our own individual being?
That's where things get really interesting. Kabbalists believe that the Tree of Life isn't just an external model, it's also a blueprint for our own inner being. Each Sephirot corresponds to a particular aspect of our psyche, a particular faculty or capacity within us.
So it's like we each have our own personal Tree of Life growing within us, a microcosm reflecting the macrocosm of the universe.
Precisely. And just as the Sephiroth are interconnected on the cosmic tree, these different aspects of ourselves are also interconnected. Our thoughts, emotions, actions, they all flow from and influence one another, creating the tapestry of our individual being.
This is blowing my mind. It's like we have this incredible potential within us, this blueprint for wholeness and enlightenment, just waiting to be explored and activated.
That's the beauty of Qabalah. It's not just about intellectual knowledge. It's about experiential understanding. It's about using these tools, these maps and symbols, to unlock our own inner potential. and to connect with the divine spark within us.
Okay, I'm definitely starting to see how Kabbalah can be a powerful tool for personal and spiritual growth. But I'm still curious about how it all connects to magic. How did those Renaissance magicians, like Agrippa, actually use the tree of life in their practices?
Well, remember that system of correspondences we talked about. Each Sephirot on the tree is associated with a whole range of symbols. Planets, elements, tarot cards, colors, scents, even deities from different pantheons. And magicians use those correspondences to create talismans, design rituals, and even navigate the astral realms.
Can you give me a concrete example? I need something to really wrap my head around how this works in practice.
Imagine you're creating a talisman for protection. You might choose to work with the Sephirot of Geburah, which is associated with strength, courage, and boundaries.
Okay, Gebra, strength, boundaries, I'm following so far.
Geburah's is also associated with the planet Mars, the element of fire, and the color red.
So you're drawing on the symbolism of Mars, fire, and red to enhance the protective qualities of the talisman.
Exactly. You might choose a red stone, like a ruby or garnet, to represent Geburah. You might engrave it with a symbol of Mars, or a Hebrew letter associated with Geburah.
So the physical form of the talisman embodies those symbolic correspondences, channeling those energies into a tangible object.
Precisely. And then, during a consecration ritual, you would invoke the energy of Geburah, calling upon its strength and protective power.
This is making so much sense. It's like you're weaving together those symbolic threads, those correspondences, to create a powerful, magical object.
And that's just one example. Magicians use those Qabalistic correspondences in countless ways to design rituals, create magical tools, and connect with the subtle forces of the universe.
This is incredible. But I have a question. Wasn't the Zohar considered a secret text, passed down through generations of initiates? How did these Renaissance magicians get access to those ideas? And was there any pushback from the Jewish community about these ideas being used outside of their original context?
That's a great question. It's true that the Zohar was initially shrouded in secrecy, but by the Renaissance, it was circulating more widely, thanks in part to the printing press. And yes, there were definitely concerns within the Jewish community about these ideas being appropriated and misinterpreted, but there were also Jewish scholars who actively engaged with Christian and Hermetic thinkers participating in that cross-cultural exchange of ideas.
So it wasn't a simple case of appropriation,
Mhm.
but rather a complex interplay of influences, with both collaboration and tension between those different perspectives.
Exactly. It was a period of great intellectual ferment, and Kabbalah became a focal point for those conversations, a shared language that could bridge those different worldviews. Even amidst disagreements and debates,
That makes sense. Okay, with Kabbalah playing such a central role in Renaissance magic, what happened next to how did those ideas evolve and influence later magical traditions?
that's where things get even more interesting. Remember how we talked about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn? They picked up that torch, further developing those Kabbalistic techniques and incorporating them into their elaborate system of magic.
So they were building on the work of those Renaissance magicians, taking those ideas and refining them even further.
Precisely. They created intricate rituals, designed magical tools based on those Kabbalistic correspondences, and even developed techniques for astral projection and communication with spiritual beings. They saw the tree of life as a map, not just of the physical world, but also of the inner realms of consciousness.
Okay, I'm definitely sensing a connection to the esoteric and occult practices that we see today. But before we dive into that, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. You said the tree of life isn't just a map of the cosmos and the self. It's also a blueprint of the divine. What does that mean? How can we understand the nature of God through this diagram?
That's a question that has fascinated Kabbalists for centuries. The tree of life presents God not as a singular, monolithic being, but as a complex interplay of forces, a dynamic unity of seemingly opposing qualities.
So it's a way of visualizing the different attributes or aspects of God.
Exactly. Each Sephirah embodies a particular divine quality. For example, cheesed, on the right side of the tree, represents love, mercy, and boundless giving. Juvura, on the left, embodies strength, discipline, and the setting of boundaries.
So it's like a cosmic balancing act, with each Sephirah representing a different weight on the scales of creation.
That's a great analogy. And the tree of life shows us that these seemingly opposing forces are not actually in conflict, but rather in dynamic tension, constantly interacting and balancing each other out.
So it's a vision of God as both unified and diverse, encompassing all those seemingly contradictory qualities, within a harmonious whole.
Precisely, and that's one of the most profound insights that Kabbalah offers. It challenges us to move beyond simplistic notions of good and evil, right and wrong, and to embrace the complexity and paradox inherent in the nature of the divine.
This is truly mind-expanding. I'm starting to grasp how Kabbalah provides not just a system of symbols and correspondences, but also a profound philosophical framework for understanding the nature of reality, the self, and the divine.
It's a journey of discovery that unfolds in layers, with each new insight opening up even deeper mysteries, and that journey is what makes Kabbalah so compelling, so endlessly fascinating.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, with this deeper understanding of the tree of life, I'm ready to delve into how those Kabbalistic techniques we touched on earlier, noterikon, gematria, temurah, and Eik Bekar, are actually USED in magical practice. What are some concrete examples of how those techniques manifest in the real world? Okay, let's unpack these techniques. You mentioned noterikon, which deals with acronyms. Can you give me an example of how that might be used in ceremonial magic?
Let's say you're working with the Tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God in Hebrew, YHVH. In Noterikon, each letter can be expanded into a word or phrase, revealing these hidden layers of meaning.
Okay.
For example, the letter Yod could be expanded to Yechida, which represents the highest level of the soul in Kabbalah. He could stand for Chokhmah, which is wisdom. Vav could be voluntas, Latin for will. And the final He could represent Hashem, another name for God. So, by unpacking this acronym, you're not just reciting a name, you're invoking a whole complex of ideas: the divine will, wisdom, the essence of the soul, and the presence of God.
So it's like you're activating those concepts through the power of language, using the acronym as a key to unlock those deeper levels of meaning.
Exactly. And that's just one example. Noterikon can be used to unpack the meaning of any word or name, revealing hidden connections and empowering your magical workings.
Okay, that's noterikon. What about gematria? You mentioned it involves the numerical values of Hebrew letters. How is that relevant to ceremonial magic?
Remember how each Sephirot on the tree of life is associated with a specific number.
Right.
Gematria allows you to connect words and phrases to those Sephirot by calculating their numerical value. Let's say you're creating a talisman for healing and want to align it with the energy of Cheesed, which represents love, compassion, and healing. Cheesed is associated with the number 4.
Okay, cheesed, healing, number 4. I'm with you.
Now, let's say you choose the Hebrew phrase, Ani lodi vidorili, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine, which is a verse from the Song of Songs, often associated with love and union. If you calculate the numerical value of that phrase using gematria, it adds up to 280.
And what's the significance of 200?
Well, if you reduce 280 to its simplest form, by adding its digits, 2 plus 8 plus 0, you get 10. And in Qabbalah, the number 10 represents Malkuth, the physical world, the realm of manifestation.
Okay, so we've got love, union, the number 4, cheesed, the number 10, Malkuth, and a talisman for healing. How does it all come together?
By using gematria, you've discovered this hidden connection between the phrase Aniladodi Vaduli, the Sephirah of cheese, and the realm of physical manifestation. This suggests that by incorporating this phrase into your talisman or ritual, you're not just invoking the abstract concept of love and healing, but grounding those energies in the physical world, directing them towards tangible results.
So gematria is like a divining rod, helping you discover hidden connections and amplify the power of your intentions.
That's a great way to put it, and it's a technique that's used extensively in creating talismans, designing rituals, and even choosing the timing for magical workings.
This is fascinating. Okay, we've covered noterikon and gematria. What about temurah, the technique that involves ciphers and codes? How is that used in a magical context?
Temurah is all about transforming words and phrases through different systems of substitution, revealing hidden meanings and connections. One of the most well-known ciphers is called Athbash, where you reverse the alphabet. The first letter, Aleph, is substituted with the last letter, Tav. The second letter, Bet, is swapped with the second to last letter, Shin, and so on.
So it's like a mirror image of the alphabet.
Exactly. And this technique can be used to create a kind of magical code, concealing and revealing meaning at the same time.
Can you give me an example of how Athbash might be used in a ritual?
Let's say you're working with a ritual designed to banish negative energies. You might take a word associated with negativity, like the Hebrew word ra, evil, and rapai, and apply the Athbash cipher. Ra, spelled Resh Aleph, becomes Tav Shin in Athbash, which spells teshuva.
And what does teshuva mean?
Teshuva means repentance, turning back towards the divine. So by applying the Athbash cipher, You've transformed a word associated with negativity into its opposite, a concept of spiritual purification and return to wholeness.
That's incredible. It's like you're taking the energy of negativity and transmuting it into its positive counterpart through this symbolic transformation.
Precisely. And that's the power of temurah. It allows you to work with language in a magical way, shifting the energy of words and phrases to align with your intentions.
This is blowing my mind. Okay, last but not least, we have Ike Bakar. You mentioned it involves turning names into symbols. How does that work in practice?
Ikbikar is a more complex technique that involves rearranging the letters of a name or phrase and then connecting those letters with lines to create a unique symbol. Think of it like a visual signature or a particular energy or intention.
So instead of working with words and numbers, you're working with images and shapes.
Exactly. And this technique was often used to create sigils, magical symbols charged with a specific purpose.
So how would you go about creating a sigil using Ike Bakar?
Let's say you want to create a sigil to enhance your creativity. You might start with a phrase that embodies that intention, like, I am a channel for creative inspiration. Then you would remove any repeating letters, leaving you with something like, IAMCHNFLCRTVSP. Next, you would arrange those letters in a specific pattern, often using a grid or a geometric shape.
And then you would connect those letters with lines, creating a unique symbol.
Exactly. And that symbol becomes your sigil, a visual representation of your intention. You can then use that sigil in meditation, ritual, or even incorporate it into a talisman.
This is incredible. I'm seeing how each of these techniques, the Tarikan, gematria, temurah, and Ike Bakar, provides a different lens for working with the Qabalistic system, unlocking those hidden layers of meaning and empowering your magical practice.
They're powerful tools, but it's important to remember that they're not just about following these rigid formulas. The real magic comes from understanding the principles behind them, from developing a deep, intuitive grasp of how language, numbers, and symbols can be used to connect with those subtle forces of the universe.
So it's not about rote memorization, but about cultivating a deep relationship with the Qabalistic system, allowing it to become a living, breathing language for interacting with the world around us.
Exactly. And that's what makes Qabbalah such a rich and rewarding path of study. It's a lifelong journey of discovery, a constant unfolding of new insights and connections.
This has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for guiding us through this intricate and fascinating world. I feel like I've only just scratched the surface, but
Yeah.
I'm already buzzing with ideas and inspiration.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just a taste of what Qabbalah has to offer. There's a whole universe of knowledge waiting to be explored.
And for you listening, we hope this has sparked your curiosity to explore further. If the tree of life is a reflection of both the cosmos and ourselves, as we've discussed, what does that say about our own potential for creativity, understanding, and connection with the divine? What hidden depths might you uncover? As you delve deeper into the mysteries of Qabalah, we encourage you to check out those books mentioned in the chapter for further study and to keep that journey of discovery going. Until next time, keep diving deep.